Hey everyone, this is Taehyung. Before I begin, I want you to take a deep breath. Wherever you are, maybe in your room, maybe walking home, maybe lying in bed, I want you to listen not as a fan, not as someone watching from a distance, but as a friend. Because what I'm about to share, it's not a story about fame or music. It's about something far more personal, a quiet moment that changed everything for me. For years, my life was a blur of sound and light. Stages, cameras, the noise of thousands calling my name, it was beautiful, but also blinding. I lived surrounded by applause, but sometimes when the lights went out, all that was left was silence. And in that silence, I began to realize how lonely I had become. I had spent so long performing for the world that I forgot how to simply be. I used to think that happiness was something you earned through perfection, through flawless vocals, perfect photos, perfect interviews. But I've learned that perfection is the quietest kind of prison. You begin to measure your worth by how much people love you, and when that love fades for even a second, your heart panics. I didn't know who I was when no one was watching. There was one night after a concert, the last one of the tour, I was sitting alone in the dressing room. The mirror in front of me still had makeup smudges on the edges, the lights buzzing softly above. Everyone else had gone, and I was just staring at my reflection. It didn't look like me anymore. It looked like someone I'd built piece by piece to survive in a world that never stops watching. And that night, something inside me cracked open, not in a painful way, more like a quiet surrender. I remember whispering to myself, who am I when I'm not Taehyung from BTS? That was the question that haunted me for months after. Then, one afternoon, everything changed, not through a headline, not through a song, but through a simple act of kindness. I was volunteering at a small art center, helping kids paint murals on the wall. It was something I started doing quietly, no cameras, no schedule, just peace. There was this one woman there, calm, genuine, with a smile that didn't ask for attention. She laughed easily, not the kind of laugh that tries to impress, but the kind that warms the air around her. She didn't treat me like Taehyung. She treated me like someone who could carry paint buckets and make mistakes. And for the first time in years, I felt human again. One day, I asked her why she kept showing up even when no one noticed. She said, because every time I show up, I become a little more like the person I hope to be. That sentence stayed with me. It still does. We started talking more, sometimes about art, sometimes about silence, sometimes about nothing at all. She didn't ask about the industry, about music or fame. She just asked how I was doing, not Taehyung, not the artist, but me. And in her presence, I started realizing something. Love isn't the grand fireworks we see in movies. It's not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, it's steady, it's someone remembering how you like your coffee, someone who looks at you like you're enough even when you're not perfect. For years, I had been surrounded by people who loved what I represented. But with her, I felt seen for who I actually was, the human behind the image, the man behind the smile. Sometimes I'd wonder, what if she only knew half of what the world expects from me? Would she still stay? But she didn't ask for explanations. She just stayed. And I realized that's what love truly is, presence. I remember one evening the sun had just set and we were sitting outside quiet watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. I said, "You know, I'm not always easy to love." She looked at me and said, "You don't have to be easy. You just have to be real." That was the first time I understood what it means to be loved without conditions. That night, when I went home, I stood by the window looking at the city. I thought about the years I had given to chasing perfection, all the rehearsals, the sleepless nights, the endless striving to be better. But what was I really chasing? Recognition or something deeper, the peace of being understood? For the first time in a long time, I felt the weight of my own heart, not heavy with pressure, but full with meaning. I whispered to myself, maybe it's time to stop performing for the world and start living for myself. And that that was the beginning of everything that followed. I didn't realize it at first, but that night by the window changed something in me. It was like a quiet switch flipped inside my heart. I wasn't chasing after applause anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wanted to be honest with her, with myself, with the life I had been given. But honesty isn't as easy as it sounds. It's not about saying what you feel, once it's about living what you say, even when it scares you. There were days when I still woke up feeling trapped by my own name. Taehyung, the man who was expected to smile perfectly, speak perfectly, live perfectly. It's strange, isn't it? You can spend years building a version of yourself for the world, and then one person walks in and makes you realize that version isn't real. I started spending less time on my phone, less time looking for validation, more time just existing. I'd visit that same art center, sometimes even when she wasn't there. I'd help the kids paint, laugh when they made a mess, forget that I was supposed to be someone people admired. But even then, I couldn't help the thoughts creeping in. What if she doesn't understand this life? What if one day the noise becomes too much and she decides it's easier to leave? That fear sat with me every night. It's the kind of fear that whispers, "You're too complicated to love." One evening, I told her about it. We were sitting in a cafe quiet, tucked in a corner, just us. I said, "Sometimes I wonder if being with me will only make your life harder." She looked up, set her cup down, and smiled the way she always does, calm, steady, kind. "Taehyung," she said softly, "you don't love someone because it's easy. You love them because it's real." And in that moment, something inside me broke and healed at the same time. For so long, I believed love was something you had to earn through effort, through image, through being enough, but she made me see it differently. Love doesn't ask you to be perfect. It just asks you to stay, to keep showing up even when things get heavy. Still, I had to face myself. Because loving someone isn't just about what you give to them, it's about what you're willing to confront in yourself. And there were still shadows I hadn't faced: the fear of disappointing people, the guilt of wanting something private in a world that demands everything public. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since I was a trainee. Late at night, after schedules, I'd sit by my piano, light a candle, and write down every thought that scared me. I wrote about the pressure, the loneliness, the hope. I wrote about her, how her voice sounded like calm after chaos, how her presence felt like home. And somewhere in those pages, I found clarity. I didn't need to be the man the world wanted. I needed to be the man she could lean on. Patient, grounded, real. There's a difference between performing love and practicing it. Performing love means saying the right words, buying the right gifts, smiling for the cameras. Practicing love means listening, forgiving, choosing peace when pride would be easier. One day I asked her what love meant to her. She thought for a moment and said, "It means not running away when it gets quiet." That stayed with me because in my world, quietness often feels uncomfortable like something's missing. But with her, the quiet was safe. It wasn't an absence of noise, it was the presence of peace. The truth is, I had no idea how to be a good partner. I knew how to write lyrics about love, how to perform it, how to make people feel it, but actually living it, that's something no stage can teach you. Sometimes I'd mess up, I'd overthink, pull away, get lost in my own head, and every time she'd wait. Not with frustration, but with patience. That kind of patience is rare. It's the kind that makes you want to become better, not because someone demands it, but because you finally want to deserve the calm they bring. One night, I asked her, "Why do you always wait?" She said, "Because I know you're not running from me, you're running from yourself, and I can wait until you stop." That line still echoes in my heart. It made me realize love isn't about finding someone who feels your silence. It's about finding someone who can sit in it with you. As weeks turned into months, I started to feel lighter. Not because life got easier, it didn't, but because I stopped pretending it was supposed to be. I remember telling her one evening, "I think I'm starting to understand what love really means." She smiled, resting her head on my shoulder, and said, "Then don't forget it when it gets hard." I promised I wouldn't. But deep down, I knew that a new chapter was coming, one that would test that promise in ways I hadn't imagined. Because real love I was about to learn isn't proven in words. It's proven in choices, the ones that define who you'll be when forever starts to feel real. And as much as I wanted to hold on to the peace I'd found, life was about to remind me that every goodbye, every beginning carries its own kind of weight. There comes a moment when love stops feeling like a dream and starts feeling like a decision. That's where I found myself standing at the edge of something real, something terrifying, something permanent. Up until then, love had been safe. It lived in quiet afternoons, in laughter, in small kindnesses. But when the thought of marriage appeared not as a fantasy, but as an actual path, everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't just thinking about moments. I was thinking about forever, and forever can be heavy. I remember the first time she mentioned it. We were cooking dinner together, nothing fancy, just ramen and some vegetables when she said it so casually, almost like a thought slipping out. "Can you imagine what it'd be like growing old together?" I froze, not because I didn't want it, but because the idea of together forever scared me more than I expected. For someone who's spent his life on stages, change is the only constant. Door on, album fade, trend shift. But marriage? That's a promise beyond the spotlight. It's saying, even when the lights go out, I'll still be here. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed everything, the years of schedules, of living in hotel rooms, of never staying long enough to grow roots. Could I really give someone the stability they deserved? Could I balance the man I wanted to be with the life I'd already built? For days, I carried that question quietly. I didn't tell her, I didn't tell anyone. I just walked through my days, smiling for the cameras, doing interviews, rehearsing like always. But every now and then, in between songs, my mind would drift back to her, to that simple sentence, growing old together. One night after rehearsal, I went for a drive. It was late, almost midnight. The city lights stretched out like stars fallen to the ground. I parked near the Han River and just sat there, the water reflecting the skyline, the air cool and still. I thought about how much I'd been given success, love, connection, and yet how afraid I was to lose control of it all. I closed my eyes and asked myself, why does love scare me more than loneliness ever did? And the answer came quietly. Because love means surrender. It means allowing someone to see you completely, without defense, without the mask of perfection. And that's the hardest thing for someone who's lived behind one for years. When I saw her again a few days later, she noticed immediately. You're quiet, she said. I nodded, not sure where to start. Finally, I said, I'm not good at forever. She smiled, not surprised. No one is, but that's the point. You learn as you go. I wanted to believe her, but my mind was tangled with doubts. I said, what if one day you wake up and realize I wasn't enough? What if the world gets too loud again and I disappear into it? She reached out, took my hand, and said something I'll never forget. Taehyung, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to stay when things aren't. That sentence hit harder than any lyric I've ever written, because it was so simple yet so true. Love isn't about keeping the world quiet. It's about finding someone who holds your hand through the noise. After that night, I started looking at life differently. Every small thing, her laughter, her sleepy texts, even our arguments felt precious because they were real. They weren't scripted, rehearsed, or captured for anyone else. They were ours. But being in love while living in the public eye is like trying to protect a flame in a storm. Every gust of rumor, every headline, every pair of eyes watching it, all threatens to blow it out. There were moments when I thought about giving up, not on her, but on the idea of trying to live two lives at once. I told her once, maybe it would be easier if no one knew. She looked at me with that quiet understanding and said, I didn't fall in love with you so we could hide. I fell in love with you because you were brave enough to be real. That night I realized something. Love without courage isn't love at all. It's comfort, and comfort can disappear the moment life gets difficult. So I made a choice, not a grand dramatic one, but a quiet, deliberate one. I decided to stop running from the future. I started to imagine it not as a dream, but as something I could build, waking up beside her, making breakfast together, arguing about silly things, growing older, slower, softer, but together. And with every image, my fear began to fade. I told her one evening, if I ever do this, if I ever marry, I want it to be because I can't imagine walking through this life without you. She smiled, her eyes glistening under the soft light. Then, don't imagine it, just live it. And that was the moment everything inside me shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore, not of the cameras, not of the expectations, not of forever. Because forever didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt like freedom, the kind that comes when you finally stop performing and start living. That night, I wrote something in my journal. Love isn't about finding the right person. It's about becoming the right person for the one you love. And for the first time, I felt ready. Ready to let go of who I had been. Ready to step into who I was becoming. That was the night I knew someday soon I'd say my last goodbye to the man I used to be. The morning I decided to tell the world, I woke up before sunrise. The city was still asleep, quiet except for the faint hum of traffic in the distance. I sat by the window, coffee untouched, watching the sky slowly shift from darkness to light. It's strange how clarity often arrives in silence. No cameras, no stage, just you and the truth you can no longer run from. For months, I had carried the secret like a delicate glass, afraid to drop it, afraid to break it. Every time I opened my phone, every time I saw my name trending, a part of me wondered, is today the day they find out? But that morning felt different. The fear that once kept me quiet had turned into something else, something stronger. Maybe it was peace, maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was love finally winning over everything else. I opened my journal and read the last line I wrote the night before. If you hide love to protect it, you'll end up suffocating it instead. And I knew I couldn't keep living like that. I looked around my apartment, the photos, the flowers she'd left the last time she visited, the small traces of a life we'd built quietly behind closed doors. Every corner whispered a story the world didn't know. And I wanted them to, not because I owed them, but because love deserves to be lived in the open. I called her. It was still early, but she answered on the first ring. Did you sleep? She asked softly. Barely, I said, my voice heavy. I think today's the day. There was a pause. Then, in that gentle tone only she had, she said, then say it. Don't let fear take what's yours. That was all I needed to hear. I showered, got dressed, and stood in front of the mirror. My reflection looked calm, maybe too calm. But underneath that stillness, my heart was racing. I set up the camera myself. No team, no lighting crew, no script, just me. I wanted it that way. I wanted every second of that video to feel honest, like a conversation, not a performance. When the red light blinked on, I took a deep breath and began. Hey everyone, this is Taehyung. The words felt heavy, almost surreal. I paused, searching for what to say next. I've shared a lot of moments with you on stage, in music, through stories and smiles, but today I want to share something personal, something that's been close to my heart for a long time. I talked slowly, carefully. Every sentence felt like peeling away a layer I'd hidden behind. For years, my life has been about giving performances, giving energy, giving parts of myself to the world. And I've loved every second of it. But behind the music and the lights, there's been someone who reminded me what it means to live. There was a long silence after that line. I could feel my throat tightening, but I kept going. I met someone who changed the way I see life, who taught me how to slow down, how to be human again, and we've decided to take the next step together. It felt unreal saying it out loud. My voice trembled slightly. I'm getting married. The words echoed in my head long after I spoke them. For a moment, I didn't breathe. I just stared at the camera, at all the faces I couldn't see but somehow could feel. And then I smiled. Not the stage smile, not the practiced one, a real one. It's strange, right? I said quietly. After all this time, the thing I was most afraid of isn't the stage or the spotlight. It's learning how to say goodbye to the version of me you all grew up with. I talked about love, about growth, about how happiness doesn't mean perfection. We all change, I said, and maybe that's okay because love isn't about staying the same, it's about evolving together. When I finally stopped recording, I didn't replay it, I didn't edit it, I just sat there breathing, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. I uploaded it and closed my laptop. The moment I did, my phone started buzzing. Calls, messages, notifications, everything coming in at once. My name was trending within minutes. Some messages were filled with joy, others with confusion, some with heartbreak. I knew that would happen. I knew that the world wouldn't all understand at once. But I also knew that for the first time, I wasn't trying to make them understand. I was just telling the truth. Later that day, I met her by the river, the same spot I'd sat alone weeks before. She was waiting, her scarf wrapped tightly against the wind. When she saw me, she smiled that kind of smile that says everything without a single word. It's done, I said. She nodded. How does it feel? I looked at the water, at the city lights reflecting across the surface, and said, like I can finally breathe again. She took my hand, her fingers cold but steady. Then breathe, she whispered. We stood there for a long time, not saying anything, just watching the world move around us. For the first time in years, I felt still. I realized that the fear I once carried wasn't about losing fame or fans, it was about losing myself. And now I finally felt found. Love had led me back to the person I was always meant to be. The first 24 hours after the announcement felt like standing in the middle of a storm, the kind that shakes everything, even the things you thought were unbreakable. My phone didn't stop vibrating. Every second, new messages appeared from friends, from people I hadn't spoken to in years, from strangers who felt like they knew me. Headlines spread faster than I could read them. Every platform, every news outlet, every fan forum, all talking about one thing: Taehyung is getting married. It was surreal. I'd imagined this moment in so many ways, but nothing could prepare me for how loud it would be. The world doesn't whisper, it shouts. Some messages were beautiful words filled with warmth and celebration. You deserve happiness. I'm proud of you. Love wins. Others were not. You betrayed us. This isn't the Taehyung I loved. How could you? Every word cut a little deeper, not because I didn't expect them, but because each one reminded me how much people had built their own version of me in their minds, one that didn't have space for who I really was. I remember sitting on the couch that night, scrolling through comments, my chest tightening with every swipe. My fiancée, she walked over, took the phone from my hand, and set it face down on the table. Stop reading them, she said softly. You don't owe anyone your pain. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. It's strange, I whispered. They loved me for being real. But the moment I showed something too real, it became too much. She sat beside me, her hand resting over mine. That's because they love the part of you that shines on stage, she said. But love off stage, it scares them. They think it means losing a piece of you. What they don't see is that love is what makes you whole. Her words sank into me like quiet rain. I didn't respond. I just let the silence fill the space between us. That night, I turned off my phone completely. No notifications, no noise, just stillness. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to disappear, not from the world, but from the chaos. I walked to the balcony and looked at the city. Seoul was alive as always, lights blinking, cars rushing, people moving. Yet, for some reason, it felt like the world had paused for me, like time itself had stopped to let me breathe. I thought about my fans, the millions of faces who had supported me through everything. I wanted them to know this wasn't the end. I wasn't leaving them. I wasn't saying goodbye to music, to them, to who I had been. I was just opening another chapter. Love doesn't take away who you are, it deepens it. But I also understood something important. The moment you choose happiness that doesn't please everyone, you become a mirror for their own fears. People project, they see you taking a step they're too scared to take themselves, and sometimes that turns admiration into resentment. And that's okay because real love doesn't need everyone's approval, only honesty between two hearts. The next morning, I went to the studio, not to record, not to work, just to sit. The place smelled like wood and old memories. I sat at the piano, ran my fingers across the keys, and began to play a melody I didn't even recognize. It was soft, hesitant, fragile, like my heart at that moment. Music had always been my way to speak when words failed, and that morning it said everything I couldn't. As I played, I remember something my father once told me. Son, the louder the world gets, the quieter you must become if you want to hear your truth. So I did. I stayed quiet. Days turned into weeks. The noise online slowly faded into background hum. My announcement wasn't breaking news anymore. It became just another story, another headline that people eventually moved past. But I didn't move past it. I lived in it. I let it shape me. There were still moments of doubt, nights when I wondered if I had done the right thing, nights when the silence of my phone felt heavier than the noise had been. But every time I felt lost, she was there, calm, steady, reminding me why I'd chosen this path. One evening, we took a walk near the Han River again, the same place where I'd recorded that message weeks ago. This time, I wasn't alone. I used to think happiness was applause. I said, watching the ripples on the water, but now I think it's this just quiet, peace. She smiled. You've given so much of yourself to the world. It's okay to keep a little for yourself now. I nodded. Maybe that's what growing up really means, learning to love without needing the world's permission. The truth is, fame teaches you to live for others, but love teaches you to live for yourself and the ones who stay when the lights go out. That night, as we stood there watching the river flow, I realized something profound. I hadn't lost the world, I'd simply found mine. And maybe that was enough. The decision to get married wasn't just about love. It was about stepping into a new life and leaving behind the one that had defined me for over a decade. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, I found myself caught between two worlds. On one side was the man who had lived under stage lights, Taehyung, the performer, the idol, the dream millions had followed. On the other was the man she knew, Taehyung, the human, the quiet one who burned toast and sang to the cat at 2 a.m. For the first time, I had to find a way to say goodbye to one without losing the other. The preparations were simple. No extravagant plans, no grand hotel, no endless guest lists. We wanted something intimate, just family, a few friends, and peace. But even in that simplicity, the weight of it all pressed against my chest. One evening, as I was choosing the final details, the music, the colors, the seating, I stopped halfway and stared at my reflection in the window. The city lights blinked behind me like memories of concerts long gone. And that's when I felt it, a wave of nostalgia so strong, it nearly broke me. I missed them, my brothers, the ones who had stood beside me when I was still just a boy trying to figure out who I was. The ones who laughed with me in backstage chaos, who cried with me after long nights, who believed in me even when I doubted myself. I knew I couldn't move forward without saying something to them. Not as an announcement, not as an idol, just as family. So that night, I sat down and wrote letters, one for each of them. To Namjoon, I wrote about leadership, about how his quiet strength had always been my anchor. You taught me how to speak without shouting, I wrote, and how to stand tall without needing the spotlight. You were the first person to tell me it was okay to be different, and I hope I've made you proud by staying that way. To Jin, I wrote about laughter. You showed me that even in the darkest days, humor could be a kind of bravery. You made us all stronger just by being light when everything else felt heavy. To Yoongi, I wrote about honesty. You never sugarcoated life, and because of that, I learned that truth, no matter how sharp, is always better than silence. Your music reminded me that pain could be beautiful if we dared to face it. To Hoseok, I wrote about warmth. You were our sun, Hyung, the way you loved, the way you gave, the way you never let any of us fall too far. You reminded me that joy isn't a performance, it's a choice. To Jimin, I wrote about friendship. You were the one who always checked in, even when the world felt like it was spinning too fast. You made me laugh, you made me think, and you made sure I never forgot who I was. And to Jungkook, I wrote something simple. You grew up beside me. You became my brother in ways blood never could. Watching you chase your dreams reminded me of why I started chasing mine. Keep shining, but don't forget to rest. When I finished, I sealed each letter carefully and placed them in a box. It felt like closing a chapter, not ending it, just preserving it. The next morning, I met them. We gathered quietly at the studio, no cameras, no reporters, just us. The room felt familiar, but the air was different, softer, almost sacred. They knew why I'd called them. There were no big speeches, no dramatic tears, just long hugs, knowing smiles, and unspoken gratitude.